Here in the UK, the highway code covers how we're meant to drive our vehicles. There have been some key changes, especially around cyclists and pedestrians, that have caused drivers an awful lot of upset. So I thought I'd take a close look at what's changed and see why on earth people are getting so upset about it. Before I do that, there are also some very important changes about mobile phone use, and I'm actually going to start with that. Now, the change has come about because of a ridiculous loophole, one that covers the use of your mobile phone in the car. It was illegal to use your phone as a phone or to send text messages with it in your hand. That rule already existed. You had to have it in a mount, like so, in which case it was fine. But you could legally, sort of, use your phone to do anything else. The comedian Jimmy Carr once got off being caught driving and using his mobile phone using a dodgy loophole lawyer by saying that he was recording a joke, and the judge said, well, that's fine. They couldn't prove it either way because they didn't have the right evidence, so he got off scot-free. So I could have picked this up, I could have made a video with it, I could have done all sorts. That said, if they charge you with the correct offence of driving without due care and attention, you're stuffed anyway, so that rule already existed. But as people have been using these more and more for emails, TikTok, whatever, when they're driving down the road, these things are so powerful now, the law has finally caught up. So if you're driving along and you're using your phone to make videos, lots of people rubbernecking, it's the latest trend, it's disgusting, or to email your mates, whatever you're doing with it, you need to stop, because as of January 2022, that is now illegal. It is illegal to handhold your mobile phone at all for anything. But there's a lot of sensationalism, a lot of people saying don't touch your mobile phone, you'll automatically get a fine. It's a £200 fine, by the way, and 6 points on your licence. Get to 12 points and they take your licence away. Get convicted in the first year of driving and they'll take your licence away straight away. So it pays to pay attention. So get your phone in a mount, and there you can do what you like with it. You can use it to make phone calls. Wouldn't necessarily advise it, but I do it on occasion myself, never lengthy calls. But if someone wants to speak to me, I will just let them chat. Sometimes it's just to say, I'm driving, I'll call you later. That's fine. It's also fine, I can record a video on my phone, which I often do, and talk to my camera, and that's fine, as long as I'm paying attention. Worth bearing in mind that I'm recording myself driving, so if I crash, I've then got some very good evidence that of what I was doing beforehand. So if I look distracted, that's not going to be in my favour. So even when I'm recording a video, whether it's on a little camera or with the phone in a mount, paying attention to what's going on around me is the priority, which is why sometimes I stop talking and focus on what's going on. That is the correct behaviour. But I can use that as a sat-nav. I can use that, oh hello Miss Hubnut, to scroll through my music. I can do all those things legally as long as the phone is in the mount. If it's in my hand, that's illegal, and rightly so. I think the law has taken far too long to cotton on to this one. So the onus is still on you not to be distracted. You've still got to pay attention, just like using menu systems on these blooming modern cars that are all newfangled and stuff. Don't let it distract you from driving. If you really need to do something, pull over and stop. And that's worth defining as well, because even if you're stopped at traffic lights, if I stop at a traffic light, grab my mobile phone and then start doing this, I'm going to be in trouble even though the car isn't moving. The police can still fine you. So always keep it in the mount. If you want to stop and play with it, do what I do here. Handbrake on, engine off, safely stopped at the side of the road. It's absolutely fine. So that is one of the key changes. So now we'll jump into the highway code changes that are causing such a furore on the internet. I honestly think some people just love to be outraged. It's not as scary as it sounds. The key change is something called the hierarchy of road users. At the very top of the list, pedestrians. Jumping down just below that, cyclists. And then we've got car drivers, horse riders are in there around the same sort of level as cyclists, car drivers and truck drivers. So what it effectively means is the more damage your vehicle is capable of doing, the greater the amount of care you should have. And there's been some key changes around junctions, so let's go and discuss those. So as well as this hierarchy where the people with the largest vehicles have the most responsibility, there's some specific rules around junctions. Here we are looking at one. So if I'm in my car, I've got my left signal on and I'm turning into a junction, I need to check for pedestrians. Now this isn't actually a change. If I'm already on the junction, as I am at the moment, that car must stop and give way to me. The change is that if I'm waiting on the curb to cross, that car should stop. And that's a very subtle difference. And I think people are wrongly assuming that it gives pedestrians the right to leap in front of a car, and if they get squished, it's the driver's fault. It's certainly going to be the case that it's on the car driver to prove he hasn't been negligent if he does strike a pedestrian. And I think the natural assumption will be that the car should have been travelling more slowly, should have been paying better attention. But it does not mean that pedestrians can just fling themselves into the road, get squished, and then go, "Ha ha, I will sue you for I am in the right." Sounds a dangerous game, to be honest. There's no point being on your moral high horse from a hospital bed. So I don't think we're going to see people leaping into the traffic with gay abandon and getting squished. I don't think that's going to happen. One of the other things people are panicking about is this car has now had to stop to let me cross. Will someone drive into the back of it? And that is why it's a should rather than a must. Because if you are correctly looking in your rear view mirror as you turn in, and you can see maybe a big truck coming up quite fast behind you, you might be turning off a faster road, you're under no obligation to stop. You should stop if it is safe to do so. If you consider it isn't safe to do so, then by all means proceed, and the pedestrian must wait. That's kind of how this works. No one is trying to make motorists to blame for everything, but the onus is very much on the cars, which can do an awful lot of damage to a person, to actually pay attention. Now, of course, it's not just cars. We've seen that bicycles are in this hierarchy. Bicycles are not as high up the hierarchy as pedestrians. So as a cyclist turning into a junction, I'm similarly obliged. I should stop if I see pedestrians wanting to cross. It's the same with zebra crossings. And to be honest, I think the easiest thing to do is probably to treat junctions as zebra crossings. On a zebra crossing, you should stop if you see people waiting to cross. You must stop if they're already crossing. It's pretty much the same rule for junctions. Incidentally, if you are going to cycle, then please wear a crash helmet and please actually have your tyres pumped up. They're flat on this one. This is purely for effect, so please don't be commenting that I'm doing it all wrong. High-vis jacket, not a bad idea, but that starts another world of arguments. There is further guidance about road positioning on a bicycle. Previously it used to say stay left but don't ride too close to the curb. Now it says keep half a metre away from the curb, but actually you can position yourself where you like. If you're coming down the road, you can see it's going to narrow, there's a blind bend, then by all means scoot yourself over a bit to the middle of the road. The highway code now says that is absolutely legitimate. Similarly, if I could do special effects, I'd put another one of me there. It's fine to ride two abreast. It's kinder to pull in if there's good overtaking opportunities, but there's nothing wrong with being two abreast. And two abreast, it forces the other car to go right to the other side of the road, and that's another thing. You must leave plenty of space. 5 feet if you're doing 30 miles an hour is a suggestion, and more if they're traveling at a greater speed. Because, you know, bikes are a lot of fun, but the state of the roads, especially with all the potholes, sometimes they're going to have to swerve around. So it's no good trying to pass as close as you can. They need space. Car drivers have an awful habit of forcing themselves through a gap next to a cyclist when really there isn't room. So really you should be leaving as much space to go around a cyclist as you would to overtake a car, in which case you go right to the other side of the road. If it's not safe to do that, don't overtake them. And similarly with pedestrians on the road, give them plenty of space, bring your speed right down. Hopefully people are already doing that, but it has been clarified in the highway code. But like I say, that isn't a law. If the highway code says you must, then it is actually a law you must abide to. If it says should, which it does in the vast majority of these updates, then it's guidance. It's saying this would be really good if you do this. You don't legally have to. And having looked through the changes, it genuinely doesn't scare me that much. Yes, we need to keep a better eye out for pedestrians. Car drivers need to bear a little more responsibility for that. And yeah, I think it'll actually be better. I do have some reservations. My reservations are mostly for the poor truck drivers, who seem to have an incredibly hard life at the best of times. And they're right down the bottom of the pecking order of this new hierarchy. So they have the greatest responsibility not to squash people. But a key problem there is that the truck drivers are the people driving around with the least visibility, with the biggest blind spots, right down the sides of the vehicle, in front of the vehicle, and when they're turning, they can only see one side of what's going on. So yeah, let's all be sensible and still give trucks plenty of space. They need it. Here's another change that's going to really upset people. If this car here is stuck in traffic, no, it's not a good idea to lean on it. I can cycle past on the inside. The highway code says that's fine to do. Gosh, these tyres are flat. But the rules also say I can come down the outside of the vehicle. It says that's absolutely fine. If the traffic's stationary, cyclists can go pretty much anywhere. That is now stated in the highway code. What this effectively means is vehicle owners have the greater responsibility to keep their eyes open and see what's going on around them. So I could check my mirrors and they seem clear, but if I have a peek at the blind spot, oh look, we've got a cyclist there. Just pretend there's someone on that bike. So if I was coming up to my junction, the onus is on me to make sure there's not a cyclist trying to come up my inside. Now, if they're a sensible cyclist, they will see the indicator and behave accordingly. But the instructions are very clear not to cut across the path of a cyclist. And that's fair enough, because that cyclist shouldn't be there. No matter how fast they're going, they shouldn't really be blasting up the inside of you. If you've just overtaken them, then they might be. But you shouldn't be doing that. You shouldn't overtake a cyclist and then cut across in front of them. So again, just keep your wits about you, keep an eye on the cyclists. I appreciate in cities, London, Oxford especially, that can be very, very difficult. But the onus is on the car driver to have the responsibility not to pull into the path of the cyclist. So there we go. I hope that's been useful, and I hope that's cut through some of the outrage and sensationalism that's doing the rounds about these changes. I genuinely do believe they've been done with the best of intentions, and I don't think it's quite as contentious as people are making out. It all boils down to, if you can cause damage to someone, be careful not to do that. Do as much as you can. And really, that should have been the approach years ago. It shouldn't necessarily have to be stated in a document. Speaking of which, these changes to the highway code went live on the 29th of January 2022 and are updated on the government website. I will include a link to that. Where they've fallen down slightly is the print version of those guidelines, the actual physical highway code. They are not due to be published until April. Now, I actually found someone on eBay selling highway codes. They put latest version 2022 in the headline. They're not actually legit. They are old copies, but they're desperately trying to flog because they're no longer valid. So do be careful. I managed to get a partial refund on mine, and it cost less than a £5 anyway, so it wasn't too bad. But there are people who are willing to make the most out of this opportunity, which seems rather unfair. But that's my take on it. It's just better for everyone involved. Yes, more onus to pay more attention, but that's no bad thing. Most accidents are caused by inattention. So even if you don't make yourself familiar with every element of the highway code, I think we could all do a better job of looking after each other, cutting down the road rage and just getting on with it. There's no point hating cyclists, because cyclists are always going to exist. Similarly, if you're a cyclist, don't hate on all motorists. We're not all idiots. Some of us actually do give you space. So yeah, I hope that's been useful. I look forward to seeing you in a future video. Farewell. And don't worry, I'm not riding this bicycle anywhere. It's going straight back in the unit where it's been sitting for the past 2 years.